All right, let's go to Canberra now for the headlines. Quite a bit around, including IR. We'll get to that in a moment, but here is Sky News political reporter Trudy McIntosh.
Labor's latest IR reforms on the verge of passing the Senate as soon as this week. The Greens have agreed to vote for the package, which includes changes for casuals and gig economy workers. The government, in exchange, agreed to include contentious right to disconnect powers for workers after hours.
Workers will be able to refuse those unreasonable messages.
Independent Lydia Thorpe on board too, making David Pocock the likely final vote.
We're getting close.
What are the last stumbling blocks?
Some work around road safety.
Business groups say it's overreach.
Something that starts to put a straitjacket around the way businesses can operate. I think it could be damaging for productivity. It's a dumb idea.
What we're simply saying is that someone who's not being paid 24 hours a day shouldn't be penalised if they're not online and available 24 hours a day.
The Prime Minister used question time to trumpet Labor's tax relief overhaul.
Now every Australian will get a tax cut. Every Australian.
The opposition leader pointing out for many Australians the relief won't be enough.
Energy costs are up by $1,000 and food prices are up nearly 10%, Prime Minister.
Outside the Parliament, pro-Palestine protesters attack Labor over the response to the conflict between Israel and Gaza. Inside the chamber, the Greens again demanded Australia push for an immediate ceasefire without condemning the actions of Hamas.
Nothing could be more urgent than helping to stop slaughter.
Well, this is a disgraceful motion. It shows the anti-Semitic approach of the Greens political party.
All right, 3 days in, it's getting pretty exciting there in Canberra. Let's bring in Sky News senior political reporter Trudy McIntosh. National Affairs Editor at the Daily Telegraph, Sky News host, of course, James Morrow. Welcome to you both. Exciting is a big word, but I mean, Canberra's pretty boring, Trudy, so we get excited about question time.
Come on.
Let's talk about question time today because, Peter Dutton kicked it off with this.
Prime Minister, under your government, Australians are on average $8,000 a year worse off. People with a mortgage are $24,000 a year worse off. Energy costs are up $1,000 and food prices under your watch are nearly 10% higher. Prime Minister, isn't every Australian worse off as a result of your broken promises and bad decisions?
And I think therein is the challenge for Labor. I mean, these tax cuts, fine. That's an immediate answer on cost of living, provided, of course, Trudy, they offset all those other costs, those verifiable costs that Dutton's gone through, and that list is long. And I reckon the $15 a week, by the time it arrives mid-year, well, it could well be seen as too little, too late.
Well, I think the interesting test ahead of the next election is, do people vote with the rear-view mirror, or are they going to be looking for something more from Labor at the next election? We know Peter Dutton is promising a new, significant, he says, tax reform policy to take to that next election. It's just a fascinating question of, are you going to reward the government for having given you money in July when the election might not be till the following May? There is going to be, though, more cost of living, make no mistake, in the May budget, potentially a mini-budget at MyEFO towards the end of the year. So Labor's not done when it comes to addressing some of those cost of living measures that Peter Dutton outlined.
Look, I think you're right. Is it a prospective or is it a retrospective thank you? But the prospective depends on whether you can trust the PM's word to deliver. And of course, we've seen a lot of bravado in the House again today, James. But he got a bit shaky last night. This is the Prime Minister on questions put to him by the ABC about trust. This got under his skin. Have a listen.
It also has to be built on something else, which is trust. So to come back to that idea, what does that mean about other commitments you have made or may make?
Well, look at what I have done, Sarah, which is to tick off the commitments that I've made one by one in a diligent way.
You had suffered a number of reverses, as I noted, particularly the Voice referendum. Do you now feel that with this you have got your mojo back?
I never lost it, Sarah.
It's not what the poll said.
Well, actually, they were ahead. We're ahead. We haven't lost, to go back to Nemesis, we haven't lost a news poll since I've been Prime Minister.
And have you given a clear message to the Indigenous leaders, to Indigenous people in Australia, where you're going next?
Yes, that very clearly. What the voice was about, of course, that wasn't...
Just stick with that question. Have you given them a clear message about where you're going?
Well, that's the point. We're on the same page because the voice was never the end.
Now, two things here, James. I think liar in the lodge really touches a nerve with the Prime Minister, but also it's so rare to see a politician admit he's focused on news poll. I know from the job they all are, but he said it there, live on camera.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, the thing too with the news poll and this Nemesis program that they are so obsessed with now is that it cuts to the heart of the way Anthony Albanese has really revealed himself to be just another transactional player in all of this. I mean, he went out with this whole tax thing and said, hey, I'm not, all politicians break promises, but this is a good one for you. But now it means that he's actually just like all other politicians. And as for the things that he ticked off there in that interview, well, what about the $275? What about the promise not to touch super, which he did? And now, of course, the stage 3 thing. So, he knows it at heart that he's actually trading away the political capital that he came in as something sort of different to what he portrayed the coalition government as being. I think that's why they're so focused on, Nemesis and why liar in the lodge winds up cutting so close to the bone.
Trudy, this IR move today, the introduction of this new rule that employers can't contact you out of hours. First of all, I don't know what problem they're trying to solve. I think most workers are not contacted out of hours. I reckon I'd love one of those jobs. I suspect you two would as well. But I mean, if you don't like journalism, you don't like answering the phone over the weekend, well, pick another job. But what's the latest on this push to get it through the upper house?
Well, I've just actually seen they've suspended standing orders in the Senate. There's a lot of movement around a change of hours. So essentially, it looks like Labor does have the numbers to actually force this through by the end of the week. They want to see this passed by Thursday.
Sorry, they got to guillotine it, Trudy? Are they going to use a guillotine?
Yeah, basically trying to limit the time. That's what it looks like from my brief reading, looking at the chamber and looking at the dynamic red there. But it looks like they had a deal with the Greens coming out, Lydia Thorpe this morning, and David Pocock was so close. That's basically what he told our colleague Kieran Gilbert. And they were going to be able to get there. Tony Burke had been incredibly quiet all afternoon, which makes you think he'd been behind the scenes negotiating this. If they've got the hours restricted, then you're pretty confident they've got the deal.
Okay, a guillotine for those at home means that they'll set times, they'll finish the debate, they will not allow speakers, they'll force votes. It's usually railed against by the left until the left brings it in. We'll have a look at what happens on that tomorrow night. James, some pretty staggering numbers out there. We talk about cost of living. Well, this week alone, our petrol's going to cost us more in terms of 50 cents for every litre that we spend putting fuel in our tank. That'll go straight to Canberra. We know going to the pub's more expensive. We now in Australia have the 3rd highest spirits tax, the 4th highest beer in the world. This is the real cost of living stuff that punters who vote are feeling every single week.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's just absolutely shocking, all of that. I mean, you would think that Australia, with our international reputation in the past, a country that's a big country where you got to drive a lot and where people enjoy, a cold one or two at the end of the day, we'd be a little more libertine about these sorts of things. But it's absolutely shocking, and I think it really goes to the heart of the divide in this country. You've got people in bubble world who live in electorates that drive a lot of electric vehicles. They're not hit by the petrol tax, or they take public transportation. Their drinks and stuff are covered by a corporate card, whereas other people, they've got to fill up the ute, they've got to fill up the family car. They like a cold one at the end of the day, and every single time it feels like the government is picking their pocket, and it's like there's nowhere to hide. And I think that it's really, it starts to hurt the sort of social cohesion of the country, even just doing things like gathering socially around a few beers at the pub. It's now more than $10 to get a schooner of beer at a lot of pubs in Sydney, where I live, which is just, it's just shocking. So it makes, casual sort of have, they say, let's have a more European sort of, culture and a more sort of dense sort of lifestyle culture where, we all live together. There's more sort of nightlife and so on. Well, no one's going to be able to afford to go out, and go to those chic wine bars if a glass of wine is $28.
Or the front bar at a pub. Forget the chic wine bar. Hey, apparently those
wherever
Parliament House cash.
Choose your poison.
Cash used to be king in this country, but the people that enforce the laws, that run the laws, that make the laws, seem to have forgotten the law. And they banned Bob Katter today, or tried to ban him, he stood up for himself, about using cash in the dining room. Tell us more.
Well, I'm just curious how he hasn't noticed this for a long time, because the coffee cart, which is just a couple of metres down from where we are in this studio, it hasn't accepted cash since COVID. I remember trying to pay cash about a year ago. They said, we don't do cash here anymore. So Bob Katter's found out the hard way when he tried to buy food yesterday, I think it was. But yeah, it does seem bizarre that Parliament House wouldn't accept what is legal tender. Bizarre.
Spot on. All right, thank you both. Speak to you soon.